You know, people often ask me how I ended up thinking the way I do. They assume I must have been born with some gift, or that I read the right books at the right age. But the truth is, I don't think I was particularly smart as a child. What I was good at, slowly, painfully good at, was noticing when I didn't understand something and refusing to settle for the words people used to explain it. That's where everything began. Most people never notice that gap. They memorize names, formulas, steps. They think and knowing the label is the same as knowing the thing. And it isn't. It's not even close. I remember once, when I was maybe 10, sitting at the kitchen table with my father. He was drawing something with chalk on the sidewalk outside. A curve, a spiral, something that just kept twisting. I asked him what it was, and he said, "It's just a line that curves." That didn't make sense to me. I could see it was a line, but it wasn't just a line. It was something that was moving in a way I couldn't describe, with words I knew. So I started asking, why does it bend like that? What makes it go this way? He didn't have answers, or maybe he didn't care to give them, but that didn't matter. The point was, I began to realize that knowing the name, line, curve, spiral, was nothing. Seeing the phenomenon, following it with your mind, it was the real work. That was where understanding started. Later, in university, the same thing kept happening. I would sit in lectures filled with brilliant people, all of them repeating the accepted language of physics. And I'd realize they didn't actually know what was happening. They could recite Maxwell's equations, but could they tell me what an electric field really is? If I asked them to imagine it, feel it, or follow it like a river. Often they couldn't. I remember one seminar, I raised my hand and asked, if the magnetic field suddenly disappeared, what would you see? What would move? What would stay? The room fell quiet. Everyone had memorized the formula, but no one had pictured it. And that's when I understood. Intelligence is overrated. Thinking is underrated. Most of what passes for smartness is memorization dressed up in clever words. So I began doing experiments in my mind. Not with equipment, though I loved that too, but with imagination. I'd take a simple pendulum and ask myself, what is actually happening here? I would picture the bob swinging, the string pulling, the forces transferring through invisible threads. I would try to describe it to myself in plain language, as if I were explaining it to a child. And if I couldn't, I knew I didn't really understand it. I remember once sketching out a problem I thought I knew perfectly. Then I realized the solution didn't match the picture in my head. That was frustrating, but also exhilarating. I could see, finally, where thinking diverges from memorizing. Thinking forces you to confront reality directly, not hide behind symbols. I also began teaching students. Some of them were brilliant in tests, but couldn't explain why the apple fell, why the pendulum swung, why light bent. And every time I would strip away the jargon, the formulas, the assumptions, I'd ask them, if we could shrink ourselves and stand on the apple, what would it feel? If you could ride the pendulum, what would you notice? Slowly, slowly, they began to see it. Not because I gave them an answer, but because I showed them the path to see for themselves. That's the moment most people miss. Understanding isn't something given. It's something built. From the ground up, with your own hands in your own mind. Sometimes I would just play. Not with a goal, not to solve a problem, just to see what would happen. I remember lying in the grass watching shadows move, thinking about how light travels, imagining how the air itself bends the sun's rays, or taking a magnet and seeing how it nudged iron filings, wondering what invisible lines connected them. The joy wasn't in proving anything, it was in seeing. Curiosity became the habit. Confusion became the companion. And strangely, the more I let myself be confused, the more clarity emerged. It's almost as if the mind refuses to work when it thinks it already knows. Eventually, I understood something fundamental. Genius isn't talent. Genius is habit. It's the habit of noticing when you don't understand, of refusing to accept names as answers, of being comfortable with not knowing, of exploring questions just because they fascinate you. If you can visualize what's happening, ask why over and over, explain it to yourself plainly, and enjoy the process, you begin to think at a different level. It doesn't matter how much you memorize. It matters how deeply you chase the reality behind the words. So when I talk to people now, I say this gently. Don't settle for the labels, the formulas, the polished answers. Sit with the phenomenon. Sketch it, describe it, follow it. Ask questions until you feel dizzy. Teach it to yourself in plain language. And most importantly, enjoy being puzzled. That's where the mind grows. That's where understanding lives. That's what thinking like a genius really is. It's not in brilliance. It's in curiosity, patience, and the refusal to accept something without seeing it. And if you can do that, really do that, then no one can teach you more than you will teach yourself.